The crystal chandelier above Elena Ripley's head swayed gently as she pressed her back against the cold marble wall, her breath shallow, her pulse hammering in her ears. It was 2:47 a.m. She shouldn't have been awake. She shouldn't have been on the third floor. She definitely shouldn't have been standing outside the door of the room where she stayed. The woman everyone called Victoria Ashford, the radiant bride-to-be, the woman who had walked into Julian Dawson's life 6 months ago and turned it into a fairy tale. But Elena had heard something. A voice. Low, urgent, and nothing like the soft, melodic tone Victoria used during the day. Hey there, beautiful souls. Welcome back to the channel. Or if you're new here, welcome to a story that's going to grip you from the first word and refuse to let go. I'm so glad you're here with me today. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. I love connecting with you all. And listen, if you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, do me a favor and click it now. You're going to want to be here for what happens next. Trust me. These stories, they're made for people like you who crave the unexpected. Now, let me ask you something. What would you do if you knew a secret that could destroy someone's life, but staying silent could destroy yours? Keep that question in your mind. Because what I'm about to share with you isn't just a story. It's a warning about the masks people wear, the lies they perfect, and the courage it takes to shatter the illusion before it's too late. Let's begin. I said 3 more days. Victoria hissed into her phone, her words sharp as broken glass. The wedding's Saturday. After that, the transfer goes through, and we're gone. Do you understand me? Elena's fingers curled against the wall. Transfer? No, he doesn't suspect a thing, Victoria continued, her voice dripping with contempt now. He's too in love to see straight. God, it's almost pathetic how easy this was. A few tears, a tragic backstory, and he handed me his entire world on a silver platter. Elena's stomach twisted. This can't be real. Relax, Marcus. Victoria paused, then corrected herself with a bitter laugh. I mean, David, we stick to the new names. No slip-ups. Not now. Not when we're this close. Elena felt the floor tilt beneath her. Marcus? David? New names. I'll see you Friday night, Victoria whispered, her tone softening into something almost tender. After the rehearsal dinner. He'll be drunk on champagne and sentiment, and I'll slip out like I always do. One more night, and then we disappear with everything. The line went dead. Elena didn't move. She couldn't. Her legs felt like lead, her mind a cyclone of disbelief and horror. She's going to rob him. She's going to marry him and take everything. 4 or 5 months, Elena had worked in this house, scrubbing floors, folding linens, blending into the background like all good housekeepers did. She'd watched Julian Dawson, the brilliant, kind-hearted billionaire who'd made his fortune in clean energy, fall hopelessly in love with a woman who seemed too perfect to be real. And now Elena knew why. Because she wasn't real. Victoria Ashford, or whoever she actually was, had built herself out of lies, brick by brick, smile by smile. And now she was going to tear Julian's life apart and walk away without a scratch. Elena's hands trembled as she backed away from the door, her mind racing. I have to tell him. But even as the thought formed, fear wrapped around her throat like a vice. Who was she? A maid. A nobody. A woman who cleaned toilets and made beds and earned just enough to send money home to her sick mother in Ohio. If she went to Julian with this, if she accused his fiancée of being a fraud, would he even believe her? Or would he fire her on the spot? Worse, what if Victoria found out Elena had been listening? What if she wasn't just a con artist, but something more dangerous? Elena's breath hitched as she hurried down the hallway, her footsteps silent on the plush carpet. She didn't stop until she reached her tiny room on the ground floor, the space she'd called home since she'd started working here, a place so small and plain it might as well have been invisible. Just like her. She sat on the edge of her narrow bed, staring at the wall, her mind spinning. 3 more days. That's all the time she had. 3 days to decide if she was brave enough to risk everything. Her job, her safety, her mother's medical bills, to save a man who didn't even know her name. Because that was the cruelest part, wasn't it? Julian Dawson had never looked at her. Not really. To him, she was just another staff member, another face in the background of his glittering, untouchable life. He probably couldn't pick her out of a lineup. But she had seen him. She'd seen the way he laughed when he thought no one was watching. The way he left notes for the staff, thanking them for their work. The way he'd once stopped to help her carry a basket of laundry up the stairs, waving off her embarrassed protests with a warm smile and a joke about upper body strength. He was a good man, and he was about to marry a monster. Elena closed her eyes, her hands clenched into fists. What would you do? The question burned in her chest, hot and relentless. Because in 3 days, Victoria Ashford, whoever she really was, would walk down the aisle in a dress that cost more than Elena made in a year. She'd say, "I do," with tears in her eyes and a knife behind her back. And when it was over, when she bled Julian Dawson dry, she'd vanish like smoke. Unless someone stopped her. Elena exhaled slowly, her decision hardening into certainty. I have to tell him, even if he didn't believe her, even if it cost her everything. Because some silences, she realized, were louder than screams. And this one would haunt her forever if she let it win. The morning sun poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Dawson estate like liquid gold, but Elena felt none of its warmth. She moved through the kitchen mechanically, preparing the breakfast tray that would be delivered to Victoria's suite: fresh-cut fruit, Greek yogurt, imported honey, and a pot of jasmine tea that cost more per ounce than Elena's hourly wage. Her hands shook as she arranged the porcelain dishes. 3 days. Elena, dear, you look exhausted, Mrs. Chun, the head housekeeper, said softly, her kind eyes crinkling with concern. The older woman had worked for the Dawson family for 15 years and had taken Elena under her wing from day one. Did you sleep at all? I'm fine. Elena lied, forcing a smile that felt like shattered glass on her face. Mrs. Chin studied her for a moment longer, then patted her hand. You work too hard. You remind me of myself at your age. Always trying to be invisible, always trying to be perfect. She paused. But sometimes, child, being invisible means people don't see you when you need to be seen. The words hit Elena like a punch to the chest. When you need to be seen. Before she could respond, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Confident, purposeful, unmistakable. Julian Dawson entered the kitchen, and the entire energy of the room shifted. He was 42 but could pass for 35, with dark hair touched with silver at the temples and eyes the color of storms over the ocean. He wore a simple white dress shirt and dark slacks. No tie, sleeves rolled to his elbows. The uniform of a man who'd built an empire but refused to let it build him. Good morning, Mrs. Chun, he said warmly. Then his gaze landed on Elena. For a moment, just a heartbeat, his eyes held hers, and she saw something there that made her breath catch. He's lonely, surrounded by wealth and power, and a wedding 3 days away, and the man looked utterly, devastatingly alone. And good morning to you, he trailed off, and Elena watched the realization cross his face. He didn't know her name. Elena, sir, she said quietly. Elena Ripley. Something flickered in his expression. Embarrassment? Regret? Elena, I'm sorry, I should have. I'm terrible with names, but that's no excuse. He smiled, and it was genuine, self-deprecating. You've been with us for months, haven't you? 5 months, sir. 5 months, and I've been too caught up in my own world to properly introduce myself. He extended his hand. Julian Dawson. Though I suppose you already knew that. Elena's hand disappeared into his warm, firm grip. She noticed the calluses on his palms. This wasn't a man who just signed checks. He worked with his hands, built things, got dirty. He's real, she thought desperately, and she's going to destroy him. Your coffee, Mr. Dawson, Mrs. Chun interjected smoothly, sliding a mug across the counter. Thank you. But his eyes stayed on Elena a moment longer. You're the one who always leaves the library exactly as I left it, aren't you? Even when it's a disaster. Elena blinked. You noticed? I notice more than people think, he said softly. Then his phone buzzed, and the moment shattered. He glanced at the screen, and his entire face transformed, lit up like a man who'd just been handed the world. Victoria, that's my bride-to-be, he said, and the joy in his voice was so pure it made Elena want to scream. 3 days until I marry the most incredible woman I've ever met. Can you believe it? No, Elena thought, because she's not real. But what she said was, congratulations, sir. He grabbed his coffee and headed toward the door, then paused. Elena, if you ever need anything, I mean it. Raise, time off, whatever, you just ask, okay? Anyone who takes care of my home the way you do deserves to be taken care of too. And then he was gone, leaving Elena standing in the kitchen with her heart in her throat and a decision burning in her chest. That afternoon, Elena found herself in Victoria's suite, changing the linens while the bride-to-be was out for a dress fitting. She worked quickly, efficiently, trying not to look at the evidence of the life Victoria had built here. Designer clothes in the closet, framed photos on the nightstand showing her and Julian in Paris, Santorini, Aspen. In every picture, Victoria looked radiant, her platinum blonde hair catching the light, her smile bright, and her eyes. Elena froze. Her eyes were wrong in one of the photos. Different. The color was off. Contacts, Elena realized. She's wearing colored contacts now, but she wasn't in this older picture. She picked up the frame with trembling hands, studying Victoria's face. Without the artificial blue of the contacts, her eyes were dark brown, almost black. Who changes their eye color for 6 months straight? Someone hiding, Elena thought. Someone pretending. She set the frame down carefully and continued her work, but her mind was racing. What else had Victoria changed? What other lies was she living? As she smoothed the duvet, her hand brushed against something hard beneath the mattress. Elena's pulse quickened. She glanced at the door, still closed, still locked from the inside. Don't, her practical mind warned. This is how you get fired. This is how you get hurt. But her hands were already moving, sliding beneath the mattress, pulling out a slim leather portfolio. Inside, she found a passport. But the name wasn't Victoria Ashford. It was Veronica Slate. The photo was Victoria, or Veronica, but younger, harder around the edges. The birth date was different too. Victoria claimed to be 31. This passport said 36. Elena's hands shook as she flipped through the pages. Stamps from dozens of countries. Dubai, Singapore, Monaco, Sao Paulo. She's done this before, Elena realized with growing horror. This isn't her first time. She photographed every page with her phone, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Then she heard it. Footsteps in the hallway. Victoria's voice, light and musical. No, darling, I'll be ready in 20 minutes. I just need to change shoes. She's back early. Elena shoved the passport back under the mattress, grabbed her cleaning supplies, and barely made it to the bathroom before the suite door opened. She stood frozen behind the bathroom door, listening to Victoria hum as she moved around the bedroom. The same woman who, just hours ago, had been plotting her escape with a man whose name she had to remind herself not to say. When Victoria finally left again, Elena emerged on shaking legs. She looked at the photos on her phone, the proof that Victoria Ashford was a lie. Now what? Because having evidence and being believed were two very different things. And in 3 days, it would all be too late. Elena waited until midnight. The estate had finally gone quiet. Staff retired to their quarters, security making their rounds on the perimeter, and Julian locked away in his study, working on last-minute business before the wedding consumed his schedule. Victoria had left hours ago for what she called a spa evening with her bridesmaids. Elena knew better now. She was probably meeting him, the man on the phone, the partner in whatever twisted scheme they were running. Elena stood outside Julian's study, the photos of the passport burning on her phone in her pocket, her courage threatening to abandon her with every breath. Just knock. Just tell him. Just. The door opened before she could touch it. Julian stood there, tie loosened, hair disheveled, exhaustion carved into every line of his face. He blinked in surprise when he saw her. Elena? Is everything all right? Her voice cracked. She cleared her throat. Mr. Dawson, I need to speak with you. It's important. Something in her tone made him straighten. Come in. The study was all dark wood and leather, walls lined with books, a massive desk covered in blueprints and contracts. A half-empty glass of whiskey sat abandoned near his laptop. What is it? Julian asked, closing the door. His voice was gentle, concerned. Are you in some kind of trouble? You are, she wanted to scream. You're in trouble, and you don't even know it. It's about Victoria, Elena said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. Mr. Dawson, she's not who she says she is. The warmth drained from his face. Excuse me. I know how this sounds, Elena began. Then why are you saying it? His voice had gone cold, defensive. 3 days before my wedding, my housekeeper comes to tell me that my fiancé is... What exactly are you accusing her of, Elena? I heard her on the phone. Elena pressed on, her hands trembling. 2 nights ago, she was talking to someone, planning something. She mentioned a transfer, mentioned disappearing after the wedding. She called someone by a different name, Marcus, then corrected herself to David. Sir, she's using fake names. She's. Stop. Julian held up his hand, his jaw tight. I don't know what you think you heard, but I found her passport, Elena interrupted, pulling out her phone with shaking hands. Hidden under her mattress. But it's not in the name Victoria Ashford. It's Veronica Slate, and she's 5 years older than she told you. And there are stamps from dozens of countries. You went through her things? Julian's voice was dangerously quiet now. You searched my fiancé's private belongings? I was changing the sheets, and I found. You invaded her privacy. He stepped closer, and Elena saw something she'd never seen in his eyes before, anger. Do you understand what you've done? The violation of trust? My God, Elena, I thought better of you. Please, Elena whispered, holding out her phone. Just look at the photos. Just look. I don't need to look at anything. Julian turned away from her, his shoulders rigid. Victoria told me someone might try this. Elena's blood went cold. What? She warned me. He laughed, but it was bitter, hollow. She said that when you come from nothing like she did, when you've worked your way up from poverty, there are always people who want to tear you down. People who can't stand to see someone else happy. She said someone might try to plant doubts before the wedding. No, Elena breathed. No, that's not. She even said it might be someone close to us. Someone in the house. Julian's voice cracked. I told her she was being paranoid. I told her that everyone here cared about us, that she was safe. And now you come to me with this conspiracy theory about fake passports and secret phone calls. It's not a theory, Elena said desperately. Mr. Dawson, please, I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to save you. She's going to rob you blind and disappear, and… Enough. Julian spun around, his face flushed with anger and something worse, disappointment. I want you out of this house. Tonight. Pack your things and go. The words hit Elena like a physical blow. Sir, I'll have Mrs. Chun prepare your final paycheck. I'll even give you a severance, 2 months' salary, because despite this betrayal, I know you have a sick mother who depends on you. His voice softened slightly, and that somehow made it worse. But I can't have someone working in my home who would stoop to this level of deception to what? What was the endgame here, Elena? Did you think I'd call off the wedding and somehow turn to you instead? What? Elena felt tears burning in her eyes. No, I would never. Then what? Julian demanded. Why are you doing this? Because she's going to destroy you. Elena's voice broke. And I couldn't live with myself if I knew and did nothing. For a moment, just a heartbeat, something flickered in Julian's eyes. Doubt. Uncertainty. Then his phone rang. Victoria's name lit up the screen, accompanied by a photo of her laughing, radiant, perfect. Julian answered it, his eyes never leaving Elena's face. Hey, sweetheart. No, I'm still at the house. Actually, something's come up. He paused, listening. We'll talk about it when you get home. I love you too. He ended the call and looked at Elena with something that felt like pity. She's on her way back, he said quietly. I think it's best if you're gone before she arrives. She doesn't need to know about this conversation. I won't tell her what you tried to do. Mr. Dawson. Go, Elena. It wasn't anger anymore. It was finality. Elena stood frozen for one more second, searching his face for any sign that he believed her, that some part of him heard the truth in her words. But all she saw was a man in love, blind to everything but the woman who was about to ruin him. She turned and walked to the door, her legs numb, her heart shattered. But as her hand touched the doorknob, she stopped. Her eyes, Elena said softly, not turning around. Ask her why she wears colored contacts. Ask her why her eyes are blue now when they used to be brown. Ask her why she'd changed something so fundamental about herself. She didn't wait for his response. Elena walked out of the study, down the hallway, toward her tiny room to pack her life into a single suitcase. And behind her, in the study, Julian Dawson stood in the silence, staring at nothing, wondering why his hands had started to shake. Elena didn't leave. She couldn't. At 3 a.m., she sat on her narrow bed, her packed suitcase beside her, her mother's last voicemail playing on repeat in her mind. Elena, honey, the treatment's working. The doctors say I might actually beat this thing. You saved my life, baby girl. You saved my life. If Elena left now, fired, with no reference, no explanation she could give to future employers, she'd never find another job that paid enough to cover the medical bills. Her mother would have to stop treatment. And after everything they'd survived, after clawing their way up from nothing, it would all collapse. But if she stayed quiet, if she let this happen, Julian would lose everything. Elena closed her eyes and made a decision that terrified her. She would stay, hidden, invisible, and she would find proof so undeniable that even a man drunk on love couldn't deny it. The next morning, Elena moved through the house like a ghost, avoiding the main areas where Julian might see her and remember his order to leave. Mrs. Chun had found her at dawn, tears in her wise old eyes. "He told me what happened," Mrs. Chun had whispered. "Oh, child, what were you thinking?" "I was thinking he needed to know the truth," Elena had replied. Mrs. Chun had studied her for a long moment, then pressed a master keycard into her palm, the kind that opened every door in the estate. "I've worked for that man for 15 years, Mrs. Chun said quietly, "and I've never seen him as happy as he's been with her. But I've also never seen him as different. He doesn't read anymore, doesn't spend time in his workshop. It's like he's dimmed somehow." She paused. "You have until tonight. Then I have to report that you've left, or I lose my job too. Understand?" Elena had nodded, grateful beyond words. Now, she watched from the servants' hallway as Victoria returned from her morning run, all glowing skin and athletic grace in designer workout clothes. She looked like every billionaire's dream, beautiful, sophisticated, effortlessly perfect. But as Victoria passed the hallway mirror, Elena saw it, the momentary drop of the mask, the cold calculation in her eyes, the slight curl of her lip that spoke of contempt rather than love. Then Victoria smiled at her reflection, practiced and dazzling, and the mask was back. She's a professional, Elena realized. This is what she does. Victoria headed upstairs to shower, and Elena waited exactly 12 minutes, long enough for the water to start running, before using Mrs. Chen's keycard to slip into the suite. Her hands were steadier this time. She knew what she was looking for. The passport was gone from under the mattress, moved, probably, after Elena's confrontation with Julian. But Victoria wouldn't have destroyed it. She needed to leave the country. Elena searched methodically, drawers, closet shelves, inside shoe boxes, between folded sweaters. Nothing. Then she remembered something her father had taught her before he died, back when he'd been a cop. People hide important things where they can grab them fast if they need to run. Near the exit. Near the door. Elena checked the coat closet by the suite entrance and found it. A leather weekender bag, expensive and nondescript, tucked behind winter coats Victoria would never wear in California. Inside the bag, 3 passports, each with Victoria's photo but different names. Veronica Slate, Vivian Stone, Valentina Cross, a laptop, bundles of cash in multiple currencies, and a burned phone. Elena's hands trembled as she powered on the phone. It was full of messages, dozens of texts between Victoria and someone listed only as D. D. The account's ready. 50 million transfers Saturday at 6 p.m., right after the ceremony. V. He signed the prenup revision yesterday. Didn't even read it. D. You're terrifying. I love it. V. 2 more days, and we're set for life. Bahamas first, then we disappear. Elena photographed everything. Every passport, every text message, every piece of evidence. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might explode. Then she heard it, the shower shutting off. No, not enough time. Elena shoved everything back into the bag, her movements frantic now. She could hear Victoria humming in the bathroom, the sound of a towel being pulled from a rack. Elena slipped out of the suite with seconds to spare, pressing her back against the hallway wall, gasping for breath. She had the proof now. Undeniable, damning proof. But would Julian look at it? Would he believe his own eyes, or would his heart override his head once again? That afternoon, Elena found Julian in the garden, sitting on a stone bench beneath the oak tree where he'd proposed to Victoria 3 months ago. He looked up as she approached, surprise and something else, wariness, crossing his face. "I thought you'd left," he said quietly. "I couldn't." Elena sat down beside him, keeping a respectful distance. "Not without giving you this." She held out her phone, the photos cued and ready. "Elena," Julian began, his voice strained. "Please," she interrupted. "I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm asking you to believe your own eyes. Just look. If you look at these and still think I'm lying, I'll leave tonight and you'll never see me again. But if you don't look," she swallowed hard, "you'll marry her tomorrow, and by Saturday evening, everything you've built will be gone." Julian stared at the phone like it was a snake. She has 3 passports, Elena continued, her voice steady now. 3 different names. There are text messages with someone named D. They're planning to transfer $50 million Saturday at 6 p.m., right after your ceremony. The prenup you revised yesterday? She got you to sign away your protection without even reading it. Stop, Julian whispered, but his hand was reaching for the phone. Her real name is Veronica Slate, Elena pressed on. Or maybe it's Vivian Stone. Or Valentina Cross. I don't know which one she was born with, but I know Victoria Ashford isn't real. Julian took the phone. Elena watched his face as he scrolled through the photos, watched the color drain from his cheeks, watched his jaw clench, watched something behind his eyes break and reform into something harder. He spent 10 minutes in silence, reading every message, studying every passport photo. When he finally looked up, his voice was hollow. Who else knows about this? Just you and me, Elena said. And Mrs. Chin knows I found something, but not what. Julian nodded slowly, his mind clearly racing. The wedding's tomorrow. Guests are arriving tonight. The media's been covering this for weeks. He laughed, but it was a broken sound. God, I'm such a fool. You're not a fool, Elena said firmly. You're someone who wanted to believe in love. That's not foolish. That's human. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and for the first time, Elena felt seen. Why did you risk everything to tell me? Julian asked. Your job, your mother's treatment, why? Elena met his gaze. Because some things matter more than safety, and you deserve to know the truth. Julian stood abruptly, his hands clenched into fists. I need to confront her. Right now? I need to. No, Elena said quickly, standing too. If you confront her now, she'll run. She has a bag packed by her door. Cash, passports, everything. The moment she knows you know, she's gone. Then what do I do? Julian's voice cracked. Elena took a breath. You let her think she's winning. And tomorrow, at that wedding she's so confident about, you make sure the only thing she walks away with is handcuffs. The rehearsal dinner was a masterpiece of deception. Crystal chandeliers bathed the estate's grand ballroom in warm light, while a string quartet played softly in the corner. 50 guests, family, friends, business associates, mingled with champagne flutes, celebrating a love story that was nothing but smoke and mirrors. Elena watched from the shadows near the kitchen entrance, her heart a war drum in her chest. Julian stood at the center of it all, Victoria on his arm, both of them glowing like the perfect couple. But Elena could see what no one else could. The tension in Julian's shoulders, the millisecond delay before each smile, the way his hand trembled slightly when he raised his glass for a toast. To my beautiful bride, Julian said, his voice carrying across the room, who came into my life like lightning and changed everything. Like a storm, Elena thought bitterly. Like a disaster. Victoria beamed up at him, tears glistening in those artificially blue eyes. You saved me, Julian, she said, her voice breaking perfectly. I was so lost before I met you. So alone. And you gave me a home, a family, a future. She turned to the guests. Tomorrow, I become Mrs. Dawson, and I promise you all, I will spend every day of my life making him as happy as he's made me. The room erupted in applause. Elena felt sick. But then Victoria's phone buzzed. Elena saw her glance at it, saw her face flicker, just for a second, with something urgent. Victoria leaned close to Julian, whispered something in his ear with an apologetic smile, and slipped away toward the terrace. Julian's eyes found Elena's across the room. Now, Elena moved through the kitchen, out the side door, into the garden where she could see the terrace from behind a hedge of jasmine. She pulled out her phone and started recording. Victoria stood in the moonlight, her phone pressed to her ear, her voice low and hard. I said I can't talk right now, David, she hissed. I'm at the rehearsal dinner. No, everything's fine. He doesn't suspect anything. Yes, I'm sure. The man's completely under my spell. Elena's phone captured every word. The wire transfer's set for 6 p.m. tomorrow, just like we planned, Victoria continued. I had to practically hold his hand to get him to sign that prenup revision, but he did it. God, he actually thanked me for protecting his assets. Can you believe it? She laughed, cold and sharp. By 7 p.m., we'll be wheels up to Nassau with $50 million, and he'll be standing at an altar wondering what the hell just happened. Not quite. Elena's blood froze. Julian stepped out onto the terrace, his phone in his hand, his face carved from stone. He'd been recording too. Victoria spun around, and for one perfect moment, Elena saw the mask shatter completely. Rage, panic, calculation. Then, impossibly, Victoria's face transformed. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Julian, oh my God, this isn't. You don't understand. Stop. His voice was quiet, lethal. I understand perfectly. Veronica. She flinched at the name like he'd struck her. Or is it Vivian? Julian continued, stepping closer. Or Valentina. Which one were you before you became Victoria Ashford? Julian, please. Victoria reached for him, but he stepped back. I've already called the police, Julian said. They're on their way, and my lawyers have frozen every account with your name on it. You're not getting a penny. For 3 seconds, Victoria stood frozen. Then something dark and terrible crossed her face, the real woman beneath all the lies. You stupid, sentimental fool, she spat, her voice completely different now. Harder, coarser, all pretense gone. You really think you're the first? Do you have any idea how many men like you I've destroyed? Rich, lonely, desperate for someone to love them. She laughed. You were the easiest mark I've ever had. I loved you, Julian said, and the pain in his voice cut through the night like a blade. You loved a fantasy, Victoria shot back. A character I played. And you know what the saddest part is? You'll never trust anyone again. I didn't just take your money, though God knows I tried. I took your ability to believe in love. That's the real con, Julian. That's what you'll never get back. Elena stepped out from the shadows, her phone still recording. Victoria's eyes went wide. You, the little maid. Her lip curled. I should have known. Julian, she's the one who saved me. Julian interrupted. She risked everything to tell me the truth. While his voice broke. While you planned to destroy me. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Victoria's eyes darted between Julian, Elena, and the garden path. Elena could see her calculating, weighing her chances of running. Don't, Julian said quietly. There are security guards at every exit. It's over, Veronica. My name, she said slowly, venom in every syllable, is Victoria. And you'll never prove otherwise. I'll say you're a scorned lover making false accusations. I'll sue you for defamation. I have your passports, Elena said quietly. All 3 of them. And your burned phone with every message to David. And recordings of your phone calls. And photos of the $50,000 in cash you have packed in a bag by your door. Victoria stared at her, and for the first time, Elena saw genuine fear. Who the hell are you? Victoria whispered. I'm nobody, Elena said. I'm invisible. That's what you counted on, wasn't it? That people like me don't matter. That we don't see things. That we don't fight back. She stepped closer. You were wrong. Police cars pulled up to the estate, their lights painting the scene in red and blue. Victoria looked at Julian one last time. You'll regret this. When you're alone in that big empty house, when you realize you'll never trust anyone again, when you die old and bitter and unloved, you'll remember me. And you'll wish you'd just let me take the money and go. No, Julian said quietly. I'll remember that even in my darkest moment, someone cared enough to tell me the truth. That's what I'll remember. 2 officers appeared on the terrace. Victoria Ashford? One of them said. Or should I say Veronica Slate? You're under arrest for fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit grand larceny. As they led her away in handcuffs, Victoria's eyes locked on Elena one final time. You took everything from me, she hissed. No, Elena said softly. I stopped you from taking everything from him. There's a difference. When Victoria was gone, when the police had left to process her, when the shocked guests had been sent home with explanations and apologies, Julian and Elena stood alone in the garden. The wedding's off, Julian said, a broken laugh escaping him. Obviously. I'm sorry, Elena whispered. Don't be. He turned to her, his eyes red-rimmed but clear. Elena, you saved my life. Not just my money, not just my business. You saved me. His voice cracked. How do I even begin to thank you for that? You don't have to. Yes, I do. He stepped closer. And I'm going to start by asking, will you stay? Not as a housekeeper. As, I don't know, a friend? Someone I can trust? Because right now, you're the only person in my life I'm certain isn't lying to me. Elena looked up at him. This brilliant, broken man who'd almost lost everything. I'll stay, she said. And for the first time in days, she saw him really smile. 3 weeks after the wedding that never was, Elena discovered that truth came with a price she hadn't anticipated. The media had devoured the story like sharks scenting blood. Billionaire Julian Dawson narrowly escapes con artist bride, screamed the headlines. Photos of Victoria, Veronica, being led away in handcuffs went viral. The tabloids had a field day, and Elena's name was everywhere. Mystery Maid saves tech mogul from $50 million scam. Housekeeper hero exposes fake fiancé. Her photo, pulled from somewhere, somehow, appeared on news sites, gossip columns, social media. Within 48 hours, Elena Ripley became the most talked-about person in the country. She'd thought the attention would fade. She was wrong. Now, standing in the estate's kitchen at 6 in the morning, Elena stared at her phone with trembling hands, reading the latest message from her mother's hospital. Elena, we need to discuss your mother's treatment plan. Several donors have withdrawn their support following recent publicity. Please call us urgently. The phone slipped from her fingers, clattering on the marble counter. No, she whispered. No, no, no. Mrs. Chun appeared in the doorway, her face grave. Child, you need to see this. She held up a tablet showing a news segment. The headline made Elena's stomach drop. Con artist partner claims Maid was accomplice, demands investigation. The screen showed a man, handsome, well-dressed, with the kind of smile that sold luxury cars, speaking to reporters. David, Victoria's partner. Elena Ripley knew exactly what she was doing, he said smoothly. She and Veronica had a falling out over the split. This wasn't heroism, it was revenge. I've provided evidence to authorities showing financial connections between them. Elena deserves to be in handcuffs too. That's a lie. Elena gasped. I know, child, Mrs. Chun said gently. But lies spread faster than truth. Always have. As if on cue, Elena's phone exploded with notifications. Emails. Messages. Threats from people who believed David's story. Marriage proposals from men who called her a gold-digging hero. Media requests. Lawyers offering to represent her, for a fee, of course. Her private life had become a circus, and she was the reluctant star. The kitchen door swung open. Julian entered, and Elena's heart sank at the expression on his face. We need to talk, he said quietly. They sat in his study, the same room where she'd first tried to warn him, where he'd almost sent her away. Now it felt different, heavy with unspoken words. My lawyers called this morning. Julian began, not meeting her eyes. David's accusations are, they're gaining traction. The media is starting to question your motives. Some of my business partners are concerned about the optics of keeping you on staff. You think I was involved with her? Elena said flatly. No. Julian said quickly, finally looking at her. God, no, Elena. I know you're innocent. But, he ran his hand through his hair. My company's stock has dropped 12%. 3 major deals are on hold. My board is threatening to remove me if I don't manage the situation. And I'm the situation, Elena finished. They want me to distance myself from you publicly. Julian continued, his voice strained. Issue a statement. Let you go. Make it clear that you were just an employee who did her job and nothing more. Elena felt something crack inside her chest. I see. I told them no, Julian said fiercely. I told them you saved my life and I won't throw you to the wolves to save my reputation. But, Elena prompted, because she could hear it in his voice. But my lead counsel thinks David might actually press charges against you. He's building a case that you were part of the con from the beginning, that you only turned on Victoria when she cut you out. Julian's hands clenched into fists. Elena, if this goes to trial, they'll destroy you. Your mother's medical history, your financial struggles, everything will become public. They'll paint you as desperate enough to do anything for money. So what are you saying? Elena asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm saying maybe, Julian swallowed hard. Maybe you should take the severance package my lawyers prepared. A generous one, enough to cover your mother's treatment for years. You could disappear, start over somewhere quiet, away from all this. You want me to leave. I want you to be safe, Julian said desperately. Elena, you saved me, and now your life is falling apart because of it. Your mother might lose her treatment. You're getting death threats. You can't even leave the estate without being swarmed by reporters. His voice broke. This is my fault. I should have protected you better. Elena stood, her legs unsteady. When does this generous severance package expire? It doesn't. But Elena, I need to think, she said quietly. Alone. She walked out before he could respond, her vision blurring with unshed tears. That night, Elena sat on the floor of her tiny room, surrounded by boxes half-packed, her phone dark and silent after she'd turned it off hours ago. Mrs. Chun had knocked twice, offering comfort and tea. Elena had declined both. Now, at midnight, she stared at the acceptance letter on her phone, the severance agreement that would make all her problems disappear. $5 million. Enough to save her mother, start a new life, vanish from the spotlight forever. All she had to do was sign and go. Run away, a voice whispered in her mind. Like you always do. Like you did when your father died. Like you did when life got hard. Her finger hovered over the signature line. Then her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. You ruined everything. Veronica's in prison because of you. I'm going to make sure you pay. And I'm going to start with your mother. Sleep tight. Elena's blood turned to ice. David. She tried to call the hospital, but it was after hours. Only the night desk answered, and they couldn't confirm anything about her mother's security. Panic clawed at her throat. Another text. The severance offer? Take it. Leave town, or things get worse for everyone you love. You have 24 hours. Elena's hands shook so badly she dropped the phone. This was it. The moment where courage died and survival took over. She could sign the papers, take the money, run, and hope David left her alone. Or she could stay and fight and risk everything. Her mother's life, her own safety, Julian's reputation. What would you do? She thought of Julian's face when he'd asked her why she risked everything to tell him the truth. Because some things matter more than safety. But that was before death threats. Before her mother became a target. Before the price of doing the right thing became too high to pay. Elena picked up her phone with trembling hands. She opened the severance agreement. And she stared at the signature line, tears streaming down her face, caught between courage and terror, between staying and running, between the woman she wanted to be and the woman she had to be to survive. Outside her window, lightning split the sky. The storm was just beginning. Elena didn't sign the papers. Instead, at 1 a.m., she did something that terrified her more than any threat. She called the police. Then she walked through the dark hallways of the estate to Julian's study and knocked on the door. He answered immediately, still dressed, eyes red-rimmed like he hadn't slept either. Elena? What's wrong? She held out her phone, showing him David's threats. Julian's face went white, then red with rage. He threatened your mother? The police are sending officers to the hospital, Elena said, her voice surprisingly steady. But Julian, I need to tell you something, and you're not going to like it. Tell me. I'm not running. I'm not signing those papers. I'm not disappearing to make this easier for you, or your board, or anyone else. She lifted her chin. I did the right thing, and I won't apologize for it. If David wants a fight, he'll get one. If your board wants you to throw me away to save your reputation, then maybe they don't deserve you as their CEO. Julian stared at her, something shifting in his expression. And if staying here puts you in more danger? He asked quietly. If fighting this publicly ruins what's left of my company, then we'll deal with it, Elena said. Together. Because I'm done being invisible, Julian. I'm done letting powerful people decide my worth. And I'm definitely done letting criminals like David think they can scare me into silence. For a long moment, Julian said nothing. Then he laughed. A real laugh, surprised and genuine. You're incredible, he said. Do you know that? Most people would have taken the money and run. Hell, I was practically begging you to. I'm not most people, Elena said simply. No, Julian agreed, his eyes holding hers. You're not. He pulled out his phone and made a call. Carter? It's Julian. Yes, I know it's 1 a.m. Listen, I need you to cancel that severance package. Because Elena's staying, and we're going to fight this the right way. I don't care what the board thinks. Set up a press conference for tomorrow. I'm going public with everything. He hung up and turned back to Elena. My head of security is already on his way to the hospital. Your mother will have around-the-clock protection. David won't get within 100 feet of her. Julian, you don't have to. Yes, I do, he interrupted. Elena, you saved my life when you didn't have to. You risked everything. Your job, your mother's treatment, your safety, because it was the right thing to do. You showed me what courage looks like. His voice softened. Now let me show you what loyalty looks like. The press conference happened at noon in the estate's main hall. 50 reporters, cameras, Phones all pointed at the podium where Julian stood with Elena beside him. Not behind him, not hidden away, but beside him as an equal. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs, but she kept her chin high. "Thank you all for coming," Julian began. "3 weeks ago, a woman I loved betrayed me in the worst possible way. She wasn't who she claimed to be, and her plan was to rob me of everything I'd built." He paused. "But this isn't a story about her. This is a story about the person who saved me." He gestured to Elena. "Elena Ripley risked her job, her livelihood, and her safety to tell me the truth. And instead of being celebrated for her courage, she's being threatened, harassed, and slandered by David Chun, Veronica Slate's partner in crime, who is now trying to paint her as an accomplice to avoid his own prosecution." Cameras flashed. Reporters leaned forward. "Let me be crystal clear," Julian continued, his voice ringing with authority. "Elena Ripley is a hero. She is under my personal protection, and I will use every resource at my disposal to ensure she and her family are safe. David Chun, if you're watching this, you've made threats against an innocent woman and her dying mother. The FBI is now involved, and you will face justice." A reporter shouted a question. "Mr. Dawson, some people are saying you've become too close to Ms. Ripley, that your judgment is compromised." "My judgment," Julian cut in sharply, "has never been clearer. I was blind when it mattered most, and Elena helped me see. I won't make that mistake again." He turned to Elena. "Would you like to say anything?" Elena stepped to the microphone, her hands trembling but her voice strong. "3 weeks ago, I was nobody," she said. "Just a maid who cleaned floors and changed sheets and lived in the shadows. I heard something I wasn't supposed to hear, and I had a choice: stay silent and keep my job, or speak up and risk everything." She looked directly into the cameras. "I chose to speak up because my father was a police officer who taught me that the right thing is the right thing, even when it's hard, even when it costs you, even when it scares you." Her voice strengthened. "David Chun is trying to silence me because the truth terrifies him. He wants me to disappear, to run, to be invisible again. But I'm done being invisible. I'm done letting bullies win." The room erupted with questions, but Julian raised his hand. "One more thing," he said. "Effective immediately, I'm establishing the Elena Ripley Foundation for Whistleblower Protection. It will provide legal defense, financial support, and security for anyone who risks everything to expose fraud and corruption. Because no one should have to choose between doing the right thing and surviving." Elena's breath caught. She turned to Julian, tears blurring her vision. He met her eyes and nodded. "This is real." The press conference exploded with questions, but Julian's head of security was already escorting them out through a side entrance. In the car back to the estate, Elena finally let herself break. "I can't believe you did that," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "The foundation, the protection, standing up there with me." "Elena," Julian said gently, taking her hand. "You gave me my life back. This is the least I can do." His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression shifted, something hard and satisfied crossing his face. "What is it?" Elena asked. "David Chun was just arrested at LAX, trying to board a flight to Singapore." Julian showed her the news alert. The FBI had been tracking him since this morning. They found evidence linking him to 3 other cons across the country. Victoria wasn't his first partner. He paused. "It's over, Elena. They're both going to prison for a very long time." Elena sagged against the seat, relief flooding through her like a wave. "It's really over?" she whispered. "It's really over," Julian confirmed. But as they pulled up to the estate, Elena saw something that made her heart skip. Her mother, sitting in a wheelchair on the front steps, flanked by 2 security guards and Mrs. Chun. "Mom." Elena scrambled out of the car before it fully stopped. "Surprise, baby girl," her mother said, her voice weak but her smile radiant. "Mr. Dawson sent his private medical transport to bring me here. Said something about you needing family right now." Elena dropped to her knees beside the wheelchair, sobbing into her mother's lap. "I was so scared," Elena choked out. "When David threatened you, I thought." "Sure, I know. I know." Her mother stroked her hair. "But you were brave anyway. You were so brave, Elena. Your father would be so proud of you." Julian stood a respectful distance away, giving them their moment. But Elena looked up at him through her tears. "Thank you," she mouthed. He nodded, something warm and indefinable in his eyes. That evening, after her mother had been settled in a guest suite with a private nurse, after the media frenzy had died down, after the estate had finally gone quiet, Elena found Julian on the terrace where Victoria had once stood and revealed her true nature. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked as she approached. "Too much adrenaline," Elena admitted, joining him at the railing. "My brain won't shut off." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one over the California hills. "I owe you an apology," Julian said finally. "That first night, when you tried to warn me, I dismissed you. Worse, I was ready to fire you for daring to tell me the truth. I was so blinded by what I wanted to believe that I almost destroyed the one person trying to save me." "You were in love," Elena said gently. "Or you thought you were. That's not a crime." "No, but arrogance is. And I was arrogant enough to think I couldn't be fooled." He turned to face her. "Elena, these past 3 weeks, watching you handle everything with such grace and courage, you've taught me something important." "What's that?" "That real strength isn't about money or power or control. It's about doing what's right even when it costs you everything." His voice dropped. "You're the strongest person I've ever met." Elena felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I was terrified the entire time." "That's what makes it courage," Julian said softly. "Being terrified and doing it anyway." He hesitated, then continued. "I need to tell you something else. When Veronica, said I'd never trust anyone again, that I'd die old and alone and bitter, part of me believed her. Part of me thought she'd poisoned any chance I had at real connection." Elena's heart began to race. "But then I watched you," Julian continued. "The way you cared for your mother. The way you stood up to David's threats. The way you refused to be invisible even when it would have been safer." He smiled. "You didn't just save my fortune, Elena. You saved my faith in people. In goodness. He paused, seeming to gather courage. "In the possibility that not everyone is wearing a mask." "Julian," Elena began, but he held up a hand. "I'm not saying this for any reason except that you deserve to know. You've changed my life in ways that have nothing to do with Victoria. And I know the timing is terrible. I know we've just been through hell. I know you probably see me as your employer, or maybe a friend at best, but," he took a breath, "I'd like the chance to know you. Really know you. Not as my housekeeper, not as the woman who saved me, but as Elena. The person you are when the cameras are off and the crisis is over." Elena stared at him, her heart in her throat. "I don't want gratitude," she said carefully. "And I don't want to be some rebound after Victoria." "You're not," Julian said firmly. "God, Elena, you're the opposite of everything she was. You're real. And I know I have work to do. Therapy, definitely therapy. And I know this is complicated and messy and maybe completely insane, but," he smiled, vulnerability written across his face. "Would you have dinner with me tomorrow? Just the two of us. No press, no crisis, no drama. Just two people trying to figure out if there's something here worth exploring." Elena looked at this man who'd been brought to his knees by betrayal and had chosen to stand back up with kindness instead of bitterness. This man who'd turned his pain into a foundation to help others. This man who saw her, truly saw her, in a way no one ever had. "Yes," she said softly. "I'd like that." Julian's smile could have lit the entire estate. And for the first time since this nightmare began, Elena felt something she'd almost forgotten: hope. 6 months later, Elena stood in the courtroom gallery, her hand clasped tightly in Julian's, as the judge prepared to deliver the sentencing. Veronica Slate sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit, her platinum hair now dark brown and pulled back severely. Without the designer clothes, the colored contacts, the carefully constructed mask, she looked ordinary. Small. Nothing like the woman who'd nearly destroyed Julian's life. David Chun sat beside her, his lawyer's face grim. The evidence against them had been overwhelming, not just from Julian's case, but from 3 other victims across the country who'd come forward after the press conference. Men who'd been too ashamed to report the cons until they saw Elena's courage on national television. "Ms. Slate," the judge began, her voice echoing through the silent courtroom. "You have been found guilty of fraud, identity theft, conspiracy to commit grand larceny, and wire fraud across state lines. The court has reviewed the evidence, including testimony from multiple victims whose lives you systematically destroyed for personal gain." Elena felt Julian's hand tighten around hers. Your actions demonstrate a pattern of predatory behavior spanning nearly a decade, the judge continued. You targeted vulnerable individuals, exploited their trust, and showed no remorse for the devastation you caused. This court sentences you to 15 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release. Additionally, you are ordered to pay restitution to your victims in the amount of $18 million. Veronica's face remained impassive, but Elena saw the slight tremor in her hands. Mr. Chun, the judge turned to David. As Ms. Slate's accomplice and co-conspirator, you are equally culpable. You are hereby sentenced to 12 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release, with the same restitution requirements. David's composure cracked. His shoulders sagged. Before this court adjourns, the judge said, I want to acknowledge someone in the gallery. Ms. Elena Ripley, would you please stand? Elena's heart jumped. Julian squeezed her hand encouragingly as she rose on shaking legs. Ms. Ripley, the judge said, her stern expression softening slightly. Your courage in coming forward prevented a significant crime and led to the apprehension of 2 career criminals who had evaded justice for years. Your actions exemplify the kind of civic responsibility and moral courage our justice system depends upon. On behalf of this court and the people of California, thank you. The gallery erupted in applause. Elena felt tears streaming down her face as she sat back down. Julian pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. You did it, he whispered. You really did it. As the bailiffs led Veronica and David away, Veronica turned one last time. Her eyes found Elena's across the courtroom, no longer hateful, just empty, defeated. Elena met her gaze steadily, without flinching. I'm not invisible anymore, she thought. And you can't hurt anyone else. Outside the courthouse, a small crowd of reporters waited, but Julian's security team kept them at a respectful distance. Elena had learned to handle the attention over the past 6 months. She'd even given several interviews about the Elena Ripley Foundation, which had already helped 12 whistleblowers facing retaliation for exposing fraud. But today, she and Julian had somewhere more important to be. They drove to a small park overlooking the Pacific Ocean, where an intimate gathering waited. Mrs. Chun, Julian's closest friends and business partners, Elena's mother in her wheelchair, healthier now, the cancer in remission, and a handful of staff from the estate who'd become like family. And standing beneath an arch woven with white roses and jasmine was an officiant, smiling warmly. Elena's breath caught. Julian, what is this? He turned to her, his eyes bright with emotion. 6 months ago, I almost married someone who didn't exist. Someone who would have destroyed me. He took both her hands. Today, if you'll have me, I want to marry someone real. Someone brave and honest and extraordinary. Someone who sees me, really sees me, and loves me anyway. Elena's heart thundered in her chest. You want to marry me? Now, I know it's unconventional, Julian said quickly. And if you want a big wedding, months of planning, all the traditional things, we can do that. But Elena, I've wasted enough time. I don't want to wait another day to call you my wife. To build a life with you. To, his voice cracked. To finally get it right. But we've only been together 6 months, Elena said, even as joy flooded through her. I've known you were extraordinary since the night you risked everything to save me, Julian countered. I've known I was falling in love with you since you refused to run when David threatened you. And I've known I wanted to spend my life with you since the morning I woke up and realized you were the first person I wanted to talk to, and the last person I wanted to see before sleeping. He smiled. 6 months, 6 years, the number doesn't matter. What matters is that you're the most genuine, courageous, beautiful person I've ever known, and I don't want to spend another day without you being my partner in every sense of the word. Elena looked at her mother, who was crying and nodding encouragingly. At Mrs. Chun, who was beaming. At the sunset painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. I don't have a wedding dress, Elena said, laughing through her tears. You're wearing jeans and a blazer, and you've never looked more beautiful, Julian said. Elena Ripley, will you marry me? Right here, right now, with the people who matter most as our witnesses? Elena thought about the scared young woman who'd pressed her ear to a door 6 months ago, terrified and alone. She thought about every moment of courage since then, every choice to stand up instead of stay silent, every decision to be seen instead of invisible. And she thought about this man who'd been broken by betrayal, but chose to heal with hope instead of hardness. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Julian Dawson, I'll marry you." The gathering cheered as Julian swept her into his arms and kissed her, tender and fierce and full of promise. 20 minutes later, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Elena Ripley became Elena Dawson. And as she stood hand in hand with her husband, surrounded by love and laughter, she realized something profound. She'd spent her whole life trying to be invisible, trying not to take up space, trying to survive without being noticed. But the moment she'd decided to be seen, truly, courageously seen, her real life had begun. "I love you," Julian murmured against her ear as they swayed to music only they could hear. "I love you too," Elena replied. "And thank you." "For what?" "For seeing me," she said simply. "For letting me see you. For building something real out of the wreckage." Julian pulled back to look at her, his eyes shining. "We're going to have an incredible life together, Elena. I promise you that." "I know," she said, and she meant it. Because this time, finally, truly, she'd found something that couldn't be faked or forged or stolen. Love built on truth. Partnership built on courage. A future built on trust that had been tested and proven real. And as the stars began to emerge overhead, Elena Dawson, former maid, whistleblower, hero, and now wife, smiled at the man who'd learned to see past facades to find the authentic heart beneath. Together, they would build something beautiful. Together, they already had. 1 year later, Elena stood in the grand ballroom of the Dawson estate, the same room where the rehearsal dinner for a wedding that never happened had once taken place. But tonight, the space had been transformed into something entirely different. The first annual Elena Ripley Foundation Gala. 300 guests filled the room. Whistleblowers who'd been helped by the foundation, journalists, activists, business leaders committed to ethical practices, and survivors of fraud who'd found the courage to come forward after hearing Elena's story. Elena wore a simple but elegant navy dress, her dark hair swept up, her mother's vintage pearl necklace at her throat. A gift from a woman who was now cancer-free and volunteering at the foundation 3 days a week. Nervous, Julian appeared at her elbow, devastatingly handsome in his tuxedo, his hand finding hers automatically. Terrified, Elena admitted with a smile. "Public speaking still isn't my favorite thing." "You're about to address a room full of people who changed their lives because you changed yours first," Julian said softly. "Just tell them the truth. That's all you've ever done." Elena squeezed his hand, drawing strength from his presence. This man who'd become her partner in every sense of the word. In the past year, they'd renovated the estate together, traveled to visit each of the foundation's beneficiaries, and built a marriage based on radical honesty and unwavering support. The lights dimmed, and Elena made her way to the podium. "Good evening," she began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "A year and a half ago, I was a housekeeper who made $9 an hour and lived in a room smaller than most people's closets. I was invisible by choice and by circumstance. I believed that safety meant staying silent, that survival meant keeping your head down, that people like me didn't get to matter." She paused, scanning the room. "Then I heard something I wasn't supposed to hear, and I had to make a choice that terrified me. Speak up and risk everything, or stay silent and betray everything my father taught me about right and wrong." A few knowing nods from the crowd. I spoke up, and it cost me almost everything: my job security, my privacy, my peace of mind, and very nearly my mother's life. Elena's voice strengthened. "But it also gave me something I'd never had before, the knowledge that I mattered, that my voice had power, that courage wasn't the absence of fear, it was acting despite it." She gestured to the room. "Every person here tonight has made that same choice. You've risked your careers, your reputations, sometimes your safety, to expose fraud, corruption, and injustice. And many of you paid a terrible price for doing the right thing." Elena smiled. "That's why we're here." The Elena Ripley Foundation has, in its first year, provided legal defense to 43 whistleblowers facing retaliation. We've secured housing for 17 people who lost their jobs after coming forward. We've paid medical bills, provided trauma counseling, and helped 12 people relocate to safe areas after receiving threats. The room erupted in applause. "But more than that," Elena continued, "we've created a community. A network of people who understand that speaking truth to power shouldn't require destroying your life. And we're just getting started. She nodded to Julian, who pressed a button on his phone. The screen behind Elena lit up with an image of a modern building under construction. I'm thrilled to announce that construction has begun on the Ripley Center for Ethical Courage, a facility that will provide temporary housing, legal services, mental health support, and job placement assistance for whistleblowers and their families. It opens next spring, and it's fully funded for the next 10 years. The applause was deafening. Elena waited for it to die down, then said quietly, "None of this would exist if my husband hadn't believed me when I needed it most. If Mrs. Chun hadn't given me a keycard and a chance. If my mother hadn't raised me to value truth over comfort. If my father hadn't taught me that courage is a choice we make every single day." Her voice grew thick with emotion. "To everyone in this room, your courage matters. Your truth matters. You matter. And you're not alone anymore." As Elena stepped down from the podium, the room rose in a standing ovation. Later that night, after the guests had left and the staff had cleaned up, Elena and Julian sat in the estate's library, the room where Elena had once carefully dusted books she'd never dared to read, believing they weren't meant for people like her. Now she sat curled in Julian's arms on the leather sofa, both of them exhausted but content. "Your speech was perfect," Julian murmured, pressing a kiss to her hair. "I almost cried halfway through," Elena admitted. "That's what made it perfect." He tilted her chin up to meet his gaze. "Elena, I need to tell you something." "Okay," she said, searching his face. "When Veronica destroyed what I thought was love, I genuinely believed I'd never trust anyone again, that I'd spend the rest of my life behind walls, protecting myself from ever being vulnerable." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "And then you came along, this tiny, fierce woman who risked everything to save a stranger, and you didn't just tear down those walls. You showed me they were never necessary in the first place." "Julian, let me finish," he said gently. "I'm not grateful you saved me from Veronica. I mean, I am, but that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm grateful that you taught me what real love looks like. Love that's built on honesty and courage and showing up for each other even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." Elena felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "You've made me better," Julian continued. "More honest with myself. More willing to be vulnerable. More aware of the people around me who I used to overlook." He smiled. "More human. You did the same for me," Elena whispered. "I spent my whole life trying to be invisible, and you made me want to be seen. You made me believe I deserved to take up space in the world." They kissed, slow and sweet, a promise renewed. "I have a surprise for you," Julian said when they pulled apart. "Another one?" Elena laughed. "You already built me an entire center. This one's smaller." He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. "Open it." Inside was a letter, an acceptance letter. "The graduate program in social work at Stanford?" Elena read aloud, her eyes widening. "Julian, I never applied." "I know. I did." He grinned at her expression. "Before you get mad, hear me out. You've talked about wanting to do more, about feeling like you need proper training to really help people. The foundation will pay for everything, and you can do the program part-time so you can still oversee operations." "But Elena," his expression turned serious. "You have a gift for this work, for helping people find their courage. You deserve the education and credentials to take it as far as you want to go." Elena stared at the letter, overwhelmed. "You applied to graduate school for me?" "I believed in you," Julian said simply. "The way you believed in me when no one else did." Elena launched herself at him, kissing him thoroughly. "I love you so much it's actually ridiculous." "Good," Julian murmured against her lips. "Because I plan on spending the next 50 or 60 years making sure you never doubt it." 3 months later, Elena received a letter forwarded through her lawyer. It was from Veronica Slate, postmarked from federal prison. Elena almost threw it away. But curiosity won. "Elena, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even deserve acknowledgement. But I need you to know something. Watching your press conference from my cell, seeing what you've built with the foundation, it broke something open in me that I'd kept locked away for years. I've spent my entire adult life being whoever someone needed me to be, taking whatever I could get, believing that the only way to survive was to use people before they used me. And then you, a woman who had every reason to stay silent, chose courage instead. I'm in therapy now, court mandated, but I'm actually doing the work, trying to understand how I became this person, trying to figure out if there's anything real left under all the lies. I destroyed a good man because I couldn't believe good men existed. I nearly destroyed you because I couldn't understand why anyone would risk everything for someone else. You didn't just save Julian. You held up a mirror that forced me to see what I'd become. And maybe, that's the first step toward becoming something different. I don't know if people like me can change, but if we can, it's because people like you refuse to become people like us. Thank you for that. V. Elena read the letter twice, then showed it to Julian. What do you think? He asked carefully. I think, Elena said slowly, that courage is contagious. That truth creates ripples we never see. And that maybe, just maybe, even the people who hurt us most deeply can find their way back to themselves if someone shows them it's possible. She folded the letter carefully. I'm not going to write back, but I'm glad she wrote. You're extraordinary, Julian said, shaking his head in wonder. No, Elena corrected with a smile. I'm just someone who decided to stop being invisible. Everything else followed from that. She looked around the library. This room that had once represented everything she couldn't have, couldn't be, couldn't dare to dream. Now it was hers. Not because she'd married money or lucked into fortune, but because she'd found the courage to speak when staying silent would have been safer. And that courage had changed everything. Come on, Elena said, taking Julian's hand. Mrs. Chin's making dinner, Mom's coming over, and I want to tell them both about Stanford in person. You're going to accept? Julian asked, hope lighting his face. I'm going to accept, Elena confirmed. Because you're right, I have work to do. People to help. A world to change, one voice at a time. She paused at the library door, looking back one last time at the room where she'd once been invisible. And I'm done hiding, she said softly. For good. Julian pulled her close, kissed her forehead, and together they walked toward the laughter and warmth of family waiting in the next room. Outside, the California sun set in brilliant shades of gold and amber, an ending and a beginning all at once. Just like Elena's story. A story about a maid who became a hero. About a woman who found her voice. About courage that changed everything. And about love, real, honest, hard-won love, that proved some things are worth risking everything for. And there you have it, friends. Elena's journey from invisible maid to hero, advocate, wife, and future social worker. She proved that courage isn't about being fearless. It's about being terrified and doing the right thing anyway. What did you think of this story? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if this story moved you, hit that subscribe button. There are more stories coming that will grip your heart just like this one did. Until next time, remember, your voice matters. Your truth matters. You matter. Never let anyone convince you otherwise. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you in the next story.